There are countries we visit for their beauty, for their mountains, their rivers, their architecture. But then, there are places we love because they hold the soul of someone we can never forget. For Sheikh Hamdan, Uzbekistan became more than just a country. It became a symbol of the first time his heart ever betrayed his control. The first time he felt utterly powerless, and incredibly alive. And all because of her. Hadia Zen. A name that, to him, feels like poetry whispered under a desert moon. It was in Samarkand, beneath the towering minarets and beneath skies that seemed to hum with the echoes of ancient love stories, that he first saw her. She was draped in a soft lavender hijab, standing quietly near the Registan Square, her eyes lifted to the heavens in a moment of silent reverence. That single glance changed everything. The prince who had been to every corner of the world suddenly found himself still, anchored in place by a presence more powerful than anything he had known. He was not meant to speak to her. Not that day. Not in that way. But love doesn't ask for permission, it simply arrives, wild and unwelcome, like a storm. Their first conversation was brief, laced with politeness and distance. But her voice stayed with him long after they parted. Her name, her spirit, her mystery, it followed him back to Dubai, haunting his thoughts, lingering in his poetry, tracing itself across every sleepless night. He returned to Uzbekistan again. And again. Not as a royal, not as a dignitary, but as a man desperately chasing the memory of a woman who had shown him a glimpse of something rare and pure. And in time, their paths crossed more intentionally. Hadia, cautious and grounded, didn't fall easily. She was not swayed by status, nor by his power. But she saw something in his eyes, a restlessness, a yearning, and she let herself believe, just for a while, that maybe love had come for her too. Their love grew in secret gardens and moonlit courtyards, far from the cameras and obligations of royal life. He wrote her letters. She cooked him traditional Uzbek meals. They walked barefoot along the banks of the Amu Darya River, dreaming of a life without titles. For a moment, it seemed like the universe had chosen them. That all borders could be erased by the power of what they felt. But not all love stories are meant to stay. The world crept in, as it always does. Expectations, responsibilities, and cultural differences became walls they could no longer ignore. Their marriage, though born of genuine love, became too heavy with the weight of things unsaid and dreams postponed. And eventually, the impossible choice was made: to love from a distance, rather than destroy each other up close. Hadia stayed in Uzbekistan. It was her homeland, her sanctuary. And though she let him go with grace, she never truly left his heart. Sheikh Hamdan, though back in Dubai, never saw the world the same again. Every place he visited was measured against the feeling she gave him in those quiet Uzbek streets. And none could compare. He still visits Uzbekistan often. Officially, he says it's for cultural diplomacy or tourism initiatives. But the truth is more sacred. He goes to walk where she once walked. To sit in the parks where they once spoke softly of their future. To breathe in the air that still holds traces of her laughter. And though they are no longer husband and wife, he calls her his muse still. The woman who taught him that royalty means nothing if the heart remains empty. There are moments when he thinks he sees her in a crowd, in a reflection, in the corner of a market, in the fleeting smile of a stranger. His guards don't understand why he pauses in random alleyways, or why he stares so long at an old scarf in a stall. But he is searching for her everywhere, even now. Not to reclaim her, but to remember who he was when she loved him. His poetry changed after Hadia. It became gentler, more melancholic. He stopped writing about conquest and glory, and started writing about surrender, about longing, about what it means to have touched something divine, even if only briefly. In private, he calls Uzbekistan her country, not because she owns it, but because her soul is stitched into every detail he remembers. People ask why he champions Uzbek art, why he funds restoration projects there, why he walks alone through Bukhara's ancient ruins. They think it's politics. But it's not. It's love. A love that didn't survive in the way the world defines survival, but a love that became immortal in memory. I chose this country because of her, he once whispered to a close friend. Because she was the only home I ever truly found. And maybe that's what love really is, not possession, not permanence, but a place within us that can never be touched by time or distance. Hadia Zen will always be the reason Sheikh Hamdan's heart returns to Uzbekistan. Not to rewrite the past, but to honor the one chapter that made everything else pale in comparison. The chapter where he was not a prince, not a leader, not a son of legacy, but just a man, completely in love. After Hadia's departure from Dubai, Sheikh Hamdan was no longer the man the world recognized. The gleam in his eyes, once full of dreams, wonder, and warmth, dimmed under the weight of unspeakable loss. He moved through his royal duties with perfect discipline, but something vital in him had vanished. His once spontaneous laughter became rare, replaced by long silences and deep, faraway stares. He would often sit alone in the gardens of Zabil Palace at twilight, watching the wind pass through the palm trees, wishing it could carry her back to him. His family noticed the change, but none dared to speak of it. He stopped writing poetry publicly, only scribbling fragmented verses in leather-bound journals locked away in his private chambers. His horses sensed it too. He rode with a heaviness they hadn't felt before, no longer racing against the wind but rather moving with it, as if in mourning. Every corner of Dubai whispered her absence. The balcony where they once watched the sunset. The perfume of jasmine she used to wear. The echo of her voice in the halls, now replaced by silence that clung to the city was too loud without her, yet too empty at the same time. He missed her in everything. The warmth of morning light, the taste of saffron tea, the way she had once softened his world with just a look. His heart, though made of the strongest resolve, cracked beneath the memory of her goodbye. She hadn't left in anger, but with a peace that hurt more than fury ever could. Her departure wasn't a storm, it was the quiet closing of a door that would never open again. Despite all his power, Sheikh Hamdan couldn't undo the past. And that helplessness crushed him more than any political burden ever could. He often replayed their last embrace, her last words, gentle, forgiving, but final. She had given him love without condition, and he had given her his soul. And now, all that remained was the haunting beauty of what once was, and the aching truth that the greatest pain a man can carry is not losing a kingdom, but losing the woman who made it feel like home. Sheikh Hamdan often wakes from dreams of cobbled streets bathed in the golden hush of an Uzbek sunset, the air thick with the scent of saffron and memory. In those dreams, Hadia is never far. She is always just around the corner, her soft laughter echoing off tiled walls, her eyes lifting to meet his with that same quiet knowing that once unraveled him. Uzbekistan has become more than a destination, it is his dreamscape, his altar of remembrance. No matter how much time passes, the land itself feels infused with her soul, and every step he takes there pulls him closer to the version of himself he once was when he belonged entirely to her. It is not often that a crown prince lets himself be ruled by feeling. Yet with her, control was not only impossible, it was undesirable. There was something sacred in surrendering to the depth of their bond, in letting go of titles and expectations. Uzbekistan, with its raw beauty and untouched elegance, allowed them to disappear into a love that didn't need cameras or ceremony. It gave them shelter when the world would never understand. And even though that chapter has closed, he still carries the tenderness of it in his every breath, in the poetry he no longer shares, in the songs he writes in silence. To the outside world, Sheikh Hamdan is a leader, decisive, stoic, invincible. But in the hidden corners of Tashkent or the winding alleys of Khiva, he is just a man retracing his footsteps. He returns to the tea houses where they once laughed over shared secrets, where her hand brushed his by accident and it felt like the universe paused. Those moments, now buried beneath layers of protocol and distance, come alive again when he walks those streets. He does not need to see her to feel her presence. She is in the way the sun kisses the domes, in the silence of the mosques where they once knelt side by side, whispering prayers neither of them dared to speak aloud. Even now, when he speaks of her, his voice softens. Not from pain, but reverence. Hadia was not merely a woman he loved, she was a compass. She taught him that home is not always a place, but a person. And when that person is gone, the soul begins its long pilgrimage back to where it last felt whole. Uzbekistan became that sacred destination. He is drawn to it not for what it gives him now, but for what it once allowed him to feel. Love in its purest, most unfiltered form. There are photographs of them, carefully hidden from the public eye. Faded images of two souls leaning into each other beneath the ruins of an ancient religious institute. In them, he does not wear bist or ceremonial medals. He wears linen and a smile that reaches his eyes. She stands beside him in a modest dress, her fingers clutching as though afraid the moment might slip away. Those photographs are not just memories, they are relics. Proof that even amidst the burdens of royalty, there existed a time when love, quiet and undemanding, ruled them both. Sometimes, Sheikh Hamdan walks the bridges of Samarkand at night and looks up at the stars, wondering if she ever does the same. If somewhere, under the same sky, she still feels the echo of what they once shared. He doesn't expect her to wait. He doesn't even expect her to look back. But the connection they shared was not bound by the laws of time. It lives in the air between them, weightless and eternal, like a promise made by the soul, not the lips. A love that asks for nothing, but remembers everything. There is a softness in his voice whenever he speaks of the region to his advisors. He funds schools and restores cultural centers, not merely as acts of diplomacy, but devotion. Every project is a quiet love letter to her. The girl who once walked barefoot across fields of lavender, who taught him to dance to folk music beneath hanging lanterns. Every brick he helps place is a silent apology for not being able to hold on to her, for choosing duty over desire when the world gave him no choice. People say a man of his power could have had any love he wanted. But they do not understand that he never wanted many, he wanted one. Hadia Zen, in all her simplicity and depth, showed him that love need not be loud to be consuming. That the most powerful bond is not the one that burns like fire, but the one that endures like earth, still, grounding, essential. And now, even in her absence, she remains his foundation. The woman who once belonged to him, and now belongs only to memory. He sometimes wonders if she still reads his poetry. If late at night, when the world sleeps, she scrolls through his words and recognizes herself between the lines. She was always the muse, always the reason. Even when the world begged for neutrality, he wrote about her, hidden in metaphors, wrapped in stars and rivers, in rose petals and mountain winds. His pen has never stopped bleeding her name, even if the ink no longer speaks it aloud. Uzbekistan, in many ways, became the paper upon which their love was written. And so, he keeps returning. Not for closure. Not for hope. But for truth. Because in a life filled with ceremonies, responsibilities, and endless performances, the only time he ever felt completely real was when he was with her. Hadia was the anchor in the eye of his storm. And Uzbekistan, her sacred land, will forever be the map to that moment when he first found his heart beating in someone else's chest. He chose this country because of her, and in many ways, he still chooses her, quietly, endlessly.